Please welcome back your Master of Ceremonies, Kimberly Strassel.
People, guess what? Hashtag CEI dinner trending #2 on Twitter. And I saw some criticism on the Twitter hashtag thing saying that I was suggesting too long of hashtags. So a couple shorter ones. Hashtag badass Elaine Chao. Hashtag, have you seen your cookie? Hashtag eat me. So, I first met Secretary Elaine Chao when she was heading the Department of Labor in the Bush administration. And I always had this extraordinary admiration for her because not only was she the longest serving secretary, cabinet official in the Bush administration, but if you followed what she did, and it was my joy to do so when I was there, I covered a lot of labor issues. She was one of the most diligent. She dug into the problems in her sector. It was the first time I learned about LM30 reports. Some of you may know there was union corruption that was rampant at the time. She tackled that and so many other things. So I already came into this with just this extraordinary view of Elaine Chao. And then somebody gave me her biography a couple of days ago so that I could introduce her tonight. And all I could think was, OMG hashtag overachiever. Oh my God. So this is a woman who's just incredible, her history and all of the things that she has done. She was a deputy maritime administrator. She was the federal chairman of the Maritime Commission, the deputy secretary of the Department of Transportation, the secretary of the Department of Labor, the first Asian American woman in a cabinet position in U.S. history. The CEO of United Way of America, the director of the Peace Corps, an MBA from Harvard, 36 honorary degrees. I could go on all night. We don't have all night. But I think the thing that's most remarkable is not just these achievements, but the incredible story behind Elaine Chao. She was born in Taiwan. She came here at the age of 8. She did not speak a word of English. In that wonderful story that Dana Bash at CNN did with her yesterday, she had a great quote talking about how difficult it was to adapt in the beginning to this country. And that quote was, like, most Chinese don't eat meat between bread. I mean, these are the things you need to learn about when you come to the United States. She was the oldest child of 6. She was under a lot of pressure to succeed. And oh, how she has succeeded. She is a tireless reformer, a champion for freedom, and a role model to so many people in this country. It's my profound pleasure to introduce Elaine Chao.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Kim Strassel because she is such a heroine to all of us. Kim, we love you. We read you all the time. And we want to thank you for being such a warrior in the battlefield of ideas and for championing conservative ideas, conservative ideals, and for inspiring and informing us, your readers. Thank you so much. When I was first in Washington, the president of CEI was Fred Smith, and I just saw him over there. I'm going to give a great shout out to Fred Smith. And I'm so delighted to meet the new president, Kent Lastman. He is so inspiring, so full of energy. Ken, Thank you so much for what you do. And also, I'm so delighted to meet tonight's awardee, Pierre de Crochet. I never realized. I know he knew he was Canadian, but I never heard his voice before. He has an accent. Thank you again for giving us such insightful views. And I want to also congratulate the organization, because you could not have chosen a better metaphor for this year's event than Alice Through the Looking Glass. In Lewis Carroll's beloved tale, Alice wonders what life is like on the other side of the mirror above the fireplace, and she steps through to find everything familiar, but also strange, new, and illogical. Now, most of us came to Washington by road, train, or airplane, not through a mirror or rabbit hole. But for so many, Washington is kind of like a wonderland that's different from the real world outside the Beltway. And just like Alice, a recurring problem in Washington is right sizing. Alice tried shrinking herself. Then she tried to get bigger. Both times, she ran into problems. In Washington, all too often, the default situation to every challenge has been to get bigger, to grow government. Well, this administration is taking a fresh approach. It is looking at opportunities to right-size the delivery of services in order to produce better results for the taxpayer. Can you imagine? And so, let me share 3 examples about how right-sizing can actually yield major benefits for taxpayers, for the citizens of our country, for our country overall. This past Monday, the President announced a transformational initiative to reform our country's air traffic control system. Now, the case for reform is clear. How many of us have been stuck at airports? How many of us have been late for some important meeting, or perhaps for just getting home? Every American has had encounters of delays and congestions. And by 2020, over 1 billion passengers will be flying through the air. Air freight is expected to more than double over the next 3 decades. And without change, our current air traffic control system will be unable to keep up. Today, many domestic flights are actually taking longer, as you may have noticed, than decades ago because of congestion and indirect routing. Now, it's not because the cities have changed or moved. The problem is the congestion and the delays caused by an antiquated air traffic control system. Air traffic controllers today in America still use paper strips to keep track of incoming and outgoing flights, and pilots rely upon a system that's based on 1960s technology. And the delays are causing more than $25 billion a year in operating cost and wasted time. So the new air traffic control structure proposed by the President will enhance safety, protect our national security, ensure state-of-the-art air traffic control technology that is secure, robust, and resilient, maintain access for all users of the airspace, especially those in general aviation and rural communities, ensure financial self-sufficiency through user fees and independent access to the public markets. Right now, there's over $5 billion in aviation trust fund dollars that's not appropriated and just sitting there. And then this entity that will be separated, air traffic control, will be governed by a professional board of directors that includes all stakeholders such as general aviation, airports, airlines, etc. And no one group will form a majority. And the fiduciary responsibility will be to ensure the safety, the health, and the efficiency of this air traffic control system. So this administration is proposing to separate the operation of our country's air traffic control system from the safety oversight of the FAA. Air traffic control operations will be split, will be moved to a non-governmental, independent, nonprofit cooperative. The FAA will retain its safety oversight functions and will remain at the Department of Transportation. And this movement would solve a long-standing conflict of interest issue of an operating entity regulating itself, which is what's happening today. But just because the co-op of this air traffic control co-op is nonprofit doesn't mean that it won't have surpluses. And the good news is 100% of the surplus revenues would be plowed back, reinvested into the co-op for future transformations, capital expenditures, ways to improve the system. Now, despite the fact that in 2001, the Congress allowed the FAA to adopt its own procurement rules, the system has been unable to deliver new air traffic control technology in a timely or costly or effective manner. Freed from budget politics, the new organization will be better able to plan, innovate, and modernize its technology. And the flying public, as well as the air traffic controllers who run the system, will benefit from the enhanced safety and efficiency. There will be no disruption in the transition. This is a proposal that restructures the governance and the financing structures of the air traffic control system. And if passed, this will be one of the largest transformations of government assets and services to a non-governmental, independent entity in our country's history. Now, some critics will say, why are we doing this now so quickly? Well, discussion and proposed bills to separate air traffic control from the FAA has been talked about for over 30 years. And today, the need is more imperative than ever before as the rate of technology accelerates. And we need to equip the air traffic controllers with the most modern, the best equipment so that they can keep our skies the safest going forward into the future. And this is the first time that any president has taken up the challenge and provided presidential leadership on this very, very important issue. Now, with government services in general, the public has sort of gotten used to prices going up while services go down. Well, we are reminding the public that it doesn't have to be that way. More than 50 countries have independent air traffic control organizations, and they're operating safely and effectively. In fact, in Canada, where our awardee comes from, the Canadian Air Traffic Control System is an independent, outside of the government, non-governmental entity. And it was spun off from the Canadian government over 20 years ago. And recently, it just proposed another 3.9% rate decrease per year while improving safety and efficiency. See, pretty amazing. And adjusted for inflation, NAV Canada, that's the air traffic control system, user fees are 45% lower than the taxes they replaced in 1996. Now that is amazing. So this concept does work. And I want to commend CEI because CEI has been a leader in recognizing the seminal issue of this very important development. And you guys came out early as a strong supporter of air traffic control reform. So thank you. Once again, CEI is ahead of the curve and a leader. Now, the second issue I want to talk to you about, right-sizing, is government regulations. This week, the administration is convening a series of events to highlight the need to reform the permitting process for building public infrastructure. In the 1930s, it took 4 years to build the Hoover Dam, 4 years. The Hoover Dam is one of the most spectacular infrastructure projects of the 20th century. 4 years, that's all it took to build it. Today, it takes longer, sometimes decades, to get a highway, a regular bridge, or a few miles of metro rail built because of the delays caused by government permitting and regulatory processes. These delays also add billions of dollars in extra costs to building infrastructure. So a major part of the President's infrastructure proposal will be common sense regulatory, permitting, and process reform. And streamlining the regulatory process will not only cut costs, it will improve environmental outcomes by delivering infrastructure improvements more quickly. Resources will be spent on actual environmental mitigation rather than stacks of paperwork. So at the Department of Transportation, we have assembled a task force that has already identified dozens of proposals to cut red tape and reduce time delays and cost burdens for roads and railway projects. So for example, we are considering allowing the steps in the permitting process to occur, wait, just listen, simultaneously rather than sequentially. This actually saves a lot of time. Another example that we're considering is to enforce the page limit restrictions on environmental and other reports, which now can number in the tens of thousands of pages. Number 3, lastly, let me also say additional words about the President's infrastructure proposal that we're all working on. In the past, poorly designed programs have wasted so much money. This administration believes that infrastructure can be improved without asking the taxpayer to shoulder the entire burden. So one way to do this will be the administration will also be looking for ways to divest itself of underutilized infrastructure assets and then invest the proceeds in new infrastructure projects. And a key component of this administration's plan will be to incentivize public-private partnerships in order to unleash the billions in private capital waiting, wanting, available to invest in public infrastructure. Public-private partnerships are widely used throughout the world to finance new infrastructure. They're not the answer to every infrastructure financing challenge. We understand that. But they work well in many, many situations. And yet today, a significant number of states in this country do not even allow public-private partnerships. Private entities are discriminated against when it comes to investing in public infrastructure. Now, does that make sense? Doesn't make sense to us. So this administration does not intend to repeat the mistakes of the past. Federal money will be used as an incentive to get projects underway quickly, not to overwhelm or to replace state, local, or private funding sources. And this is important because historically, only 16% of infrastructure spending is federal. The other 84% is state, local, and private investments. So the federal dollars should not be displacing the state, local, and private dollars. Instead, the federal dollars should be used as seed capital to incentivize, to motivate a more innovative, creative way to find financing and funding for these public infrastructures. So whether it's fixing the air traffic control system or regulatory reform, I think we can take a page from Alice and find the right size to get the job done better by introducing common sense, market-based reforms. We can enhance safety, fix our crumbling infrastructure, and create a better quality of life for the hard-working American people. It's an important lesson, and one that Washington should be able to learn without falling down a rabbit hole. So, I'm a great fan of CEI. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for supporting a wonderful organization, and thank you for everything that you do to advance liberty and principled change. Thank you so much.
Everyone, one more time. Elaine Chao, amazing. That gives you a sense of the quality that we have in some offices in government, and we need to remember that.